But to start, also, I won't claim to be an expert in the DPRK worker fraud. We are just really good at the anonymity labeling and things like that. And it just happens to be that there's a lot of overlap with what these remote workers do and what Spur does. And so I'm going to focus on where we excel, and I'm not going to try to speak out of line because, once again, a lot of other people are experts in the actual tracking of the fake employees, their LinkedIn's, all the different job applications, things like that. We're going to focus on IP intelligence and what we can do with that. So first off, we're gonna take a look at Zoom and Slack. Um, I was hoping to have a stretch goal of G Suite in here as well, but unfortunately, like Zoom and Slack were already hard enough to figure out how to do what I wanted it to do. Um, my good friend Claude helped me figure out exactly what we needed to extract, and it might have been a little wrong on permissions, but I think that that's kind of updated now. I'll show how to map that against Spur data, kind of how to highlight a couple of your things, point you guys to the GitHub for the project I put together, and give you guys a link to some free data. And you can start applying that data or use your API key from Spur and plug it together. Either way is going to work, but no subscription to Spur is actually necessary to do this exercise. You'll be able to do it all on your own. Um, Not everything that's anonymous is going to necessarily escalate to something that you care about. So that's something I kind of want to talk about a little first. Just because Astrill VPN shows up in your logs doesn't mean that you have a real problem. Astrill VPN is incredibly popular with escaping the Great Firewall. It's one of the few applications or few like mainstream VPN apps that tends to work over there. If you're a company that has a lot of presence in China and such, you're likely to see Astrill VPN unrelated to North Korea. But if you are a small US shop or you don't necessarily have that foreign like connection, you're likely to like that Astrill VPN connection is going to be way more interesting to you. This just kind of will help you maybe triage a few things. Like the file that I'm going to provide you guys at the end of this includes Astrill VPN, it includes ProxySocks5, and it includes a bunch of the different like VDI services that we track now, like Chasm and others. Anything that I've heard in the past that has been really related to this I decided to include in the file. So a lot of different services that we didn't include in the original file, like the original was just Astrill VPN, but there's new things we know about now. So I'm including those IPs as well. So, like I said, accessing the data and stuff from Slack and Zoom. If you're pulling your Slack logs and looking for this, it might already be too late because at that point you might already have them as an employee in there. But Zoom with a candidate, uh, this should hopefully raise the bar there and escalate when something might seem suspicious for somebody that you're interviewing. One thing to note. Zoom and Slack both require paid subscriptions to do these features, and it's not necessarily the base paid features. Zoom requires a business or business plus, and Slack requires just a paid plan in general. Um, I don't like when SaaSes hide security behind features and payment, but what do you do? So I'll try to work around that. Okay, so let's go ahead and try it out. Here is the GitHub project that I put together, and this is going to be a Python project that will automatically enrich your logs from Zoom or Slack. Uh, if you don't have Slack and you just put in your Zoom credentials, that'll work. I'd love support from anybody else that wants to write other connectors. So if somebody else has some familiarity with G Suite, feel free to like jump in here, do a pull request. Like we'd love the help in adding more things, more support. But to start, Slack and Zoom. So with Slack, you go into the Slack API and you go to create a new application. And you'll do it from scratch, give it a name. give it which workspace you're going to do it in. And just because I don't want to dox my actual employees, I'm going to do it into one of our test Slacks. For Zoom, I don't have one, so I'm just going to have to hope for the best and not dox any of my employees. So you then go down over to OAuth and permissions. And when you scroll down, you're going to see different scopes and you're going to add user token scopes. If you have an enterprise Slack instance, you'll be able to give very fine-tuned audit permissions that aren't overly aggressive. Those only exist in enterprise. If you're in any other one, you have to give it full admin permissions. I don't love that, but once again, Slack and um, just Slack in general is gating features behind enterprise payment. So it needs admin, it needs users read, and users read email. Maybe you only need one. You get to the top, you'll refresh because for some reason it doesn't realize that you've done it, and then you'll click install. I'm not going to install this, but once you install, it'll give you a prompt with your token, and it's going to begin with XOXP or something like that, which we're going to need later in this process. Now, if we hop over to Zoom, what you're going to do is you're going to go develop and build app. You're going to create a server-to-server OAuth app, give it a name. You're going to need to note all of these things for the environment variables that you're going to pass in to the project. But you're going to want to go down to scopes and add in these different scopes here. So add scopes, search for the first, and then finally, so this will give your Slack app the permissions to see all meetings that have happened and then also grab participant information. And when you have a Business Plus account, uh, part of doing that will give you the IP address of the participant. It also has internal IPs and a lot of other metrics and things. I'm not sure why, but it does have all that stuff. We're going to focus on the external IPv4 address. So once that's all done, you'll drop down, fill in the information, your developer information, go to activate it, and it'll be available in your instance. You'll want to go back to the app credentials and copy off all of the different IDs, including the secret, and use that for the environment variables that I'm about to show you. So one of the things, you'll be able to download the file that I provided. And in this particular case, I am passing in the Slack API token, um, the Zoom account ID, Zoom client ID, and Zoom client secret. So that's going to be able to pull the Slack logs and pull the Zoom information, and that's going to enrich it against this particular IP file. So once you are able to download it at the end of this session, you can do this. You don't need your Spur permissions or Spur any type of Spur credentials, but you'll be able to do it there and just run it. So it's not particularly the fastest, and especially if you have a large Slack instance. Um, Slack at the level that we subscribe to only has 7 days of data. And you kind of have to page through the data, so it can be a little slow. And since this isn't a very used Slack instance, there's not that many logs to pull. Um, and then walking all the different Zoom meetings. And hopefully I don't display any meetings that have privileged information, but I doubt that that's going to happen here, since that's the same number of meetings I had in my demo earlier. So in this particular case, we had one IP address flag as Astrill VPN, and that belongs to our employee Josh, which I always thought he was one of the sketchier employees at Spur. So we flagged him in both Slack and in my personal meeting for Zoom. So uh, that's a very easy way of doing it with the given file. If you want to do this differently, there is a run example.sh that will just run it against your Spur token. So provide a Spur API token, and you can then fire this off. And what it'll do is it'll enrich the logs and have much more like um, enriched logging. So I'm going to do that here, and then I'm going to go through a little bit of the data that you see. Um, so instead of using the file, like I said before, it's going to enrich against the context API, all 100 or so IP addresses that we pull. And then it's going to look for tunnel operators that are going to be Astrill VPN, any of the VDI services, things like that. It's all configurable in the project. So as we identify other services that they tend to like to use, it's really easy to just go update. And it's just kind of a watch list of what type of tunnels or what type of VPNs and proxies we should be looking out for. Always likes to hang at that meeting 50. So once again, flagging Josh, but this time we did it with the API, which is more fun, I guess. Um, in the reports directory, we drop a couple of things. Enrichment report is going to be all 100, or it's going to be all the different entries, and it's going to be enriched with the IP data. That's going to include all of your employees and their houses and things like that. Anomaly reports really going to be focusing specifically on things that flag as some type of VPN or proxy. So if we dive into that, first thing we see here is our Sean, one of our researchers, who loves using Moldad, which Moldad's not bad, but it is a VPN, so we do put it in the anomaly list. And in here, he tends to pick Moldad in the around the West Coast, so kind of just lines up with that. Um, but yeah, so I don't want to expose any of the other employees and scroll down further. I just happen to know Sean was at the beginning and he's already consented to this. So uh, plus it's a whole company full of VPN researchers, and almost every one of us is using Molvad or Proton. So our logs are full. Yours might not be, or it could be very full, all over the place. But yeah, that is how to use this project. Going through and looking in the GitHub project, there's a list of like what are critical operators, and I'm not saying NordVPN is or mold that, but you can change that as you wish. Like I said, the file that we're sharing includes Astrill VPN, ProxySocks5, and a bunch of VDI operators. And in a moment, we're going to get that list to you guys, and you'll be able to go pull this GitHub project and give it a run yourself. Let me pull back open real quick the PowerPoint. We've done a discussion about this in the past, and previously we had a blog post that we first released the Astrill IP list on. Um, Now we have our new updated one. So I put a UUID on it. I know the links, you're not going to be able to copy this from here, but we're going to send this out in the email. And so you'll be able to grab it. I'm also going to share it in a couple of the different working groups that we're in. So you'll be able to pull it from there if you happen to be a part of one. And pull the list. There's about 60,000 IP addresses that have a high association with this type of DPRK activity. It's focused on Astrill VPN, which, like I said, there are legitimate reasons that someone might be using Astrill VPN that doesn't make them one of these candidates. However, ProxySocks5 is highly abnormal. If you see ProxySocks5, it might not necessarily be a DPRK connection, but it is worth investigating on its own because you have to go very far out of your way to get a ProxySocks5 IP address and to get that set up. And then all the different VDI providers. So if you're looking at Chasm or some of those other ones, all of those are going to be listed as well. Sign up for the Spur community UI at app.spur.us. Plug it in, see our data, and you can pivot there on Astrill VPN and these others. So if any of these IP addresses flag in your from the list, flag on your logs, go plug them in directly on the UI and you can get the full view. And it's not just the name of the VPN. You'll get all the details that we have surrounding that VPN as well. So I'm going to go ahead and pass that over to Scott, and we will keep going.
Awesome. Thank you, Riley. Folks, just a few moments where I can have the opportunity to introduce Spur to you if you're not completely familiar with who we are and what we do. A lot of pretty much everything that Riley talked about today was, performing IP enrichment. From our perspective, organizations, start with maybe some disjointed tools, some inaccurate data, whatever, kind of piecing it together. What we specialize in is centralizing it and giving you the deepest, richest, highest fidelity data available to do this, so that you can progressively move from a detection approach to potential threats to actively defending with some knowledge and real-time insight. And underlying that kind of progressive strategy of kind of maturing the program over time is really three steps. First is, getting good data to make good risk-based decisions. And we talked about the fidelity and the accuracy of Spur's data to do that. Second is increasing efficiency and reducing the cost of investigations, right? That's a good outcome to help to measure the program over time. Getting the data, enriching it quickly, accelerating your investigations, getting to a point where you're confident in the findings. And then third, that kind of leads into the third point. They're demonstrating program value with a really meaningful return on investment. Look, I know security tools are and data is sometimes difficult to justify if there's not a good business outcome behind it. I think Riley just demonstrated a very good hands-on use case to use the data to investigate and then derive some sort of an ROI outcome. Hey, we've identified this potential malicious activity, these anonymizers, these users in the environment that could be a risk or a threat to us. So from our perspective, that's kind of like a progressive nature to approaching your IP enrichment program. So next thing is who are we? Our mission, our reason for being, is to help to turn obfuscation into evidence. We see a tremendous amount of anonymized IP traffic out there in the world, whether from VPNs, res proxies, mobile proxies, and others. Our objective, our reason for being, is to shine a light on that, de-obfuscate it or de-anonymize it, to give you good insights and good intelligence to make those risk-based decisions that we talked about on the previous slide. We do that by tracking what we think is the highest number of active IP addresses at about 60 million on a daily basis, and more than 1,000 active services, active VPN and res proxy services. So it's not just about depth, but also, or breadth rather, but it's also about depth, giving you the attributes that go along with those IPs to help you, deconstruct them and accelerate your investigations. As Riley talked about, we're a residential proxy specialist, and our expertise in that space enables us to deliver, high quality data to help you, move your investigations along. We've got a low false positive rate, high levels of accuracy, and then everything that the way that Spur has itself set up is to get you results in minutes, to get you the download, to get your integration set so that you can start manipulating data and analyzing. Customers come to us to address any one of a number of use cases. We've bucketed them into three, whether it's enterprise security, managing the perimeter, hunting for threats, or detecting fraud use cases. Are there people interacting with anonymous infrastructure against your network boundary? Are there authentications coming in or attempted authentications coming in, from VPNs or res proxy? Are there folks who are attempting to execute some sort of malicious activity somewhere in the world? You need to investigate that to isolate, identify, and potentially block it. And then from a fraud detection perspective, what does your account creation look like? Are there attempted account takeovers? Is there inventory hoarding? Is there scraping? Anything that could involve, theft or stealing of IP or commercial value. We deliver our capabilities in, I would say, three primary areas. First is the data that we deliver. We're known for the regular downloads, the daily downloads and updates of our data feeds, but also you can access a lot of that data through on-demand lookups through our context API, with the integrations built into your seams or soars on the back end to get that data, or into a data lake to help you manipulate it according to your needs. And also, in a third route here is to deploy a little piece of code on your website to start capturing some of that data, analyzing user sessions, and then validating that traffic to detect threats in real time. Companies choose us for a lot of reasons. I mentioned the breadth and the depth in some of these items before. Don't have to hammer on these again, but we specialize on accuracy and fidelity of data in matching and exceeding any of the other players out there in the space. And I would say finally, the last piece of it here would be, how we've helped companies like yours. We took an example here of SaaS platforms, and we've got companies, 8 of the 11 largest software companies in the world, 4 of the 6 largest banks, 3 of the 5 largest social media platforms, all 3 of the largest retailers, and then governments around the world who have turned to Spur to get the highest fidelity data to help them enrich their IPs and accelerate their investigations. We've got a couple of examples here of how we helped SaaS CRM platforms recognize a large number of fraudulent account signups. Anonymized IP traffic was behind it. We helped them implement that and then stop account signups and logins in their environment, helping them to prevent against scraping and then save a lot of money on the back end for account creation. So just a quick example of how Spur has helped organizations like SaaS platforms. And really, I think that's probably it from my perspective. Wanted to open it back up to Peter. Peter, I think we're going to start to curate our list of questions that came in, and we'll go from there. Thank you, everybody, for listening in to my part of the presentation.
There's
Thanks,
some
Scott.
really good questions that I saw pop up. Peter, do you want to go through and read off a couple of them, and I'll try to answer them?
Yeah, absolutely. There's quite a number here, so I'm trying to parse through these and get to some good ones. There's some common themes, though. So let me try to summarize a couple of these into kind of one question. People are asking, what about Microsoft Teams? What about WebEx? I know you went through 2 particular examples, but what about those?
Yeah, so I was mostly focusing on what we use at Spur, and mostly because we already have enterprise licenses or paid licenses with those. If anybody has familiarity with Teams in their auditing or with WebEx, happy to include it. And even if you guys just have like a general idea of how to include it, I can try to writing it up and including in the GitHub project as well. So just mostly focusing on what we had access to directly.
Excellent. Okay, good. Yeah, I think that takes care of, I think there's at least 4 or 5 people that asked that question, either chat or Q&A. So good. Let me see if I can find the next one. Looks like someone asked why, or what do you mean by getting out of the way to get the proxy IP?
Okay, yeah, for ProxySocks5, setting up a SOCKS5 proxy and routing Zoom traffic through it is a lot of headache. Whereas running a VPN and just having all of your system's traffic egress out that VPN, that is a very easy thing to do. And so if you start seeing ProxySocks5 or things like that, it means that somebody really went out of their way for a setup to be able to, egress their traffic through it, especially for SaaS applications.
Well, very engaged audience here. Questions are pouring in. This is good. Next question I've got is, do you integrate with other threat intel sources to enrich your IP data, or is the tagging and intelligence 100% coming from Spur R&D?
So that is all us. We run lots of VPN and proxy crawlers for all the major services. And so when you see something pop up in our data feed, it's because we've actually used the service and was able to crawl and label it. There are false positives, so to speak, in some of the services like Proton VPN, Windscribe, NordVPN, and others, where sometimes traffic gets routed through residential proxies. And although there is traffic from Nord being routed out somebody's house, it's not a traditional VPN. So when we label it that way, we try to make sure that the Nord labels and the Windscribe labels and things like that are true tunnels and not because it's a overlap with residential proxies in trying to evade streaming blocks and things like that.
Excellent. So actually, this one's not a question, but I'll read it anyway. Kudos for providing a webinar that goes beyond slideware and some very practical steps for detecting fake job candidates. So thank you for that. There are some other questions. Actually, many of these have come from anonymous attendees. So can we go through the Zoom logs afterwards and kind of de-anonymize these folks, Riley?
I thought the same thing where I was accidental as to whether or not I would expose the people on this call, but I think it was all finished meetings, not actively running ones. Um, so I see one of the things that popped up asking about context API enrichments. The context API is just a per IP enrichment. So when you run against your Slack logs, it'll be a one for one and it deduplicates itself. So we're not running the same IP multiple times. But it doesn't allow you to pull from the context API all Astrill VPN IPs or things like that. It's a one-directional IP to enrichment. If you wanted to do the other way around, our data feeds are great for that use case, where you can download all the things that we see. Yeah.
Good. Good.
Yeah, I will drop that GitHub link right now.
Cool. And then this will also be in the follow-up email that we send with a recording of this session. I'll include that link when we send that out tomorrow. You
Awesome.
also may have noticed I put a final poll question up on your screen. So please, if you get a chance, answer that one. Looks like most folks have already answered it, but you'll notice
I
that.
just saw a great question about BigQuery. So right now, when we offer our data feeds and do enrichments there, we usually offer it in a JSON delimited file. However, we do offer some different cloud native solutions, and we do have it all in BigQuery. So it wouldn't be difficult for our customers to be able to us share it that way as well. Just nobody's actually asked for that yet, surprisingly.
Here's another one. How often do you update VPN IP data and how accurate is it?
Great question. So the context API is real time. If our crawler discovers a brand new Astrill VPN IP right this second, our API will reflect that immediately. Our data feeds are daily, so they're daily updates. We also offer real-time streaming of all of our findings as well. But most of our larger customers just download a daily snapshot, which with the churn rate on a lot of these VPN services, a daily snapshot is good enough. Most of them don't churn that frequently.
Excellent. Still a number of questions in here. I think we're up to, looks like 25 open questions, which gives me an idea. We may have to do a future webinar that's just Q&A. Maybe submit the questions in advance and then we'll go through those. But
Great idea. I see the question right now about how many API keys are included. So if you go on our website and you swipe a credit card for it, it's just the one API key. You can invite other people to your organization. And when you do that, you'll have everybody can share that key and you can rotate that key. Unfortunately, you can't allocate more. If you're an enterprise customer, you can allocate and slice up the feeds however you want. The admins can grant permission, set query limits, that kind of thing on each of the tokens.
good. So there's actually a series of good questions here from an anonymous attendee, but it says, how do we get a list of full Molvad VPN IPs?
That's a great question. That would be one of our data feed offerings. The overlap with Molvad and just crime and stuff in general, it goes a little bit beyond this. We focus the list for this particular webinar on the services that DPRK has used in the past. Not that they don't use Molvad, but the number of normal people that use it, like Sean from that I showed on our screen earlier, like that's a good example of normal people use it as well.
Their question popped out here. Is there a training video on how to use Spur and how to read your information after you enter the IPs in Spur? We have documentation.
Yeah, we have our docs.spur.us that kind of dives into each of the fields and things like that. But we've actually been talking about doing some info videos and kind of talking through different things you might run into, talk about CGNAT and what that means with residential proxies, and kind of diving into more details. And hopefully we'll have some of those on the website shortly. We're doing kind of a whole redesign.
Okay. How do you deal with FP regarding Astrill VPN usage?
So Astrill VPN with false positives, like we're, like I said, crawling these. We have figured out their app. A lot of the servers are app specific and not based on the Open VPN configs that we pull. So we are constantly breaking these different services to try to enumerate them as best as we can. But like I said, if it shows up in our list, it's because one of our crawlers was connecting through Astro. So the risk of a false positive is pretty much nil for this service.
Excellent. I think they're coming in faster than we're answering them, but there's another. Do you have integration with SIEM solutions like Microsoft Sentinel?
Microsoft Sentinel is coming soon. That is something that we are planning to have Q1. It's the development environment that Microsoft provides. It's a little bit more challenging than some of the other integrations that we've built in the past. But we are looking to hire right now a new integrations engineer that just focuses on integrating our data in third-party solutions. So if that person's hired and knocks it out before then, great. If not, one of us is going to get to it by Q1.
Excellent. I'm just picking these randomly, Riley, so I apologize if I'm if these aren't great questions to choose. But what is your average false positive IP determination?
Yeah, false positives are really difficult to quantify because what one person might consider a false positive isn't necessarily. So with residential proxies and others, um, there's a lot of overlap with residential proxies on IP addresses with real people. And just because a real customer is connecting and we say a residential proxy is on there, doesn't mean it isn't a residential proxy. It just means that it's the real user that is on that IP address versus one of the proxy services that is also selling bandwidth on there. So in most of these cases, we are using these services and we're labeling it as such. We try to make sure that we convey it in our data well, so that there's a difference between there's real people on here as well as the bad guys, so to speak, or is it all the traffic that's coming through here is like a traditional VPN like Molvad, and everybody is wittingly using Molvad. Um,
Let's see if I can find another. I think we'll do a handful more questions and then we'll let everyone have some time back.
to
Uh,
answer Noah's, well, I just throwing names out there. Answering the question about high confidence toxic combos with Astrill VPN and North Korea. So asking, um, Astrill VPN really is going to depend on your organization. If you are an organization that has, like I said, a huge Chinese presence, you're going to see a lot of Astrill VPN. It's very common to be used over there. If you're a US only company that usually hires just US based employees and you're seeing connections from Astral VPN, that alone is something worth investigating. I think also tying it together with you know solution to the DPRK problem isn't going to be IP only based. It's going to be a combination of something flags based on the IP, like ProxySocks5 or Astrill VPN, as well as indicators in their resume and commonalities in the speech pattern that they use in their resume with others that you're receiving, and email address overlap that other people are determining. And honestly, the best solution to this problem is working with other organizations that are also combating this problem. Because when you start pooling resources across all these orgs, you'll be able to better find out when these individuals are approaching you and share that back to the community. So if they slip up with you, but they don't slip up with somebody else, by you guys sharing in the background that information, you'll be able to help both organizations protect themselves, even if they don't make a mistake when it comes to IP connections or things like that.
Excellent. Looks like, oh, I read a couple of good ones and then I scrolled down to others, but let's see. Da-da-da. There's the one. I'll just read this. How can Spur detect residential proxy and help to investigate click fraud? So hopefully that was answered a bit by Scott, but I don't know if you want to comment on that. How can Spur detect residential proxy and help investigate click fraud?
Yeah, residential proxies are one of the most fascinating problems. And when we first started Spur and looking into the problem, all we could think of was this is a botnet that nobody else is tracking, nor nobody thinks is a botnet. And just because you clicked through some terms of service on an app you download doesn't mean that they should be able to fully utilize your traffic. I was seeing a post on Reddit earlier today about somebody installing one of these get paid to applications where they were making some money on their bandwidth, and they ended up doing like 10,000 connections or something against Netflix, and Netflix sent a cease and desist. And now that person's being involved in it. So a lot of residential proxies, like I said, are on real people's devices, and either they're wittingly selling the bandwidth or it's unwittingly included in an application. And in those cases, we have lots of different sources, but crawling these networks and using those connections to be able to identify the IPs and report them as quickly as possible so that they can be flagged by others in their organizations as, you know, being used by people other than just the actual subscribers.
Excellent. Let's do two more questions and then we'll let everyone have some time back. So the one that I see here is if you are in DPRK and set up routing through a legitimate Chinese house IP, would you be able to detect that as a res proxy, or would it just look like a landline connection?
That's a great question. So in our data feed, that's going to depend. If this is something that's like their own private connection and it's not necessarily a commercial service, um, we might not be able to see it. We might not be able to flag it within our data, but we actually have a tool called Monocle, which is a JavaScript-based anomaly detector. And if you have that in your stack anywhere, and you can get that person to browse to it and render it, we'll be able to identify that that person's not where they are located or where they claim to be located, and that they're hopping through somebody else. So that's our solution to identifying unlabeled or like privately operated proxies and VPNs.
All right, I was looking for one good final question. They are legitimately coming in faster than I can read them, but this is great. So let me mention this. If we haven't gotten to your question, we'd love to. So feel free to send us an email to communications@spur.us, and we'll hopefully be able to answer some of them via email. If not, we do look forward to providing you with more of these webinars. And like I said, maybe a Q&A webinar is in order. So in the meantime, I'll just read this one. Does Spur have any VPN proxy servers and threat group attributions/mappings beyond DPRK?
Yeah, so we focus on the technology themselves and not necessarily what actors are operating on that technology. That is beyond the scope of our expertise. We really focus on just being able to fully understand how services like Molvad and Astrill VPN and all those others operate. And honestly, it takes a whole team of Intel people just to figure out and tear apart these applications and VPN services to fully understand them. That the step beyond is what traditional threat companies do really well at. So CrowdStrikes and others that's what they excel at, is that mapping between APT and the anonymous infrastructure they use.
Awesome. Great. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you, especially Riley, for fielding all those questions and for going through the demo. Thanks, Scott. And we look forward to the next webinar. Look in your inbox when we announce that, and forward to providing more information. Thanks, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.